The weapon was 3 inches from Sienna Hayes's chest when she made the choice that would change everything. It was 9:51 p.m. on a rain-drenched November night in Brooklyn's Little Italy, and 3 aside. Masked men had just stormed into Rosie's kitchen Café, the small restaurant belonging to her dying mother. They wanted the dolling, $240 in the register, but when the youngest robber turned his gun on the frail old man sitting in the back booth, Sienna didn't think. She simply stepped between the barrel and the stranger. The old man she shielded was Vincent Castellano, the retired billionaire founder of Castellano Industries, one of the most powerful real estate and investment empires on the East Coast. A man they called the Wesser, Silver Fox of Brooklyn. Sienna had no idea. By morning, 4 armed guards would arrive at her cafe's door, sent by Vincent's son, a powerful billionaire named Dante Castellano, who would look at Sienna and see something he'd stopped believing was real, because in Italian tradition, when you save someone's life, you create debito d'onore, a debt of honor so profound it binds families across generations. But 12 hours before that robbery, Sienna Hayes was just a 27-year-old waitress who counted every dollar and prayed her dying mother would see one more sunrise. If you love stories of franchise, unexpected romance and second chances, hit that like button and subscribe to our channel. Share this with someone who believes kindness always finds its way back. Stay tuned because what happens next will take your breath away. While the world saw a hero in the making 12 hours earlier, Sienna Hayes was just a woman drowning in debt. She stood behind the register of Rosie's kitchen Café, the silence of the room amplified by the meager stack of cash in her hand, $240, the exact price of her despair. Tomorrow's food invoice was $380, due the moment delivery arrived. No exceptions. The rent was 5 days late. The electric bill sat in the pile of unopened mail on the kitchen table. Her mother's pain medication was running low, and the next refill required insurance he wasn't sure was still active. Sienna closed her eyes, drew in a deep breath, then shut the register. She'd gotten used to numbers that never added up. The Café was only 800 square feet, tucked on a quiet corner in Little Italy, Brooklyn, wedged between a bakery that had closed last year and an antique shop nobody ever seemed to enter. Floor was worn so thin that the most traveled paths showed through like faint roads. The vinyl chairs were cracked, patched with matching tape that still couldn't hide the tears beneath. The menu was menu, written in chalk on the blackboard behind the counter, her mother's handwriting from 30 years ago, slanting slightly to the right, as if it were always reaching for something just out of range. Wasn't a fancy café. This was where the neighborhood grandmothers came for tea and complaints about their daughters-in-law. This was where construction workers stopped in for sandwiches, with ours looking at the price. This was the place Sienna had called home for 12 years. At 10 o'clock in the morning, when she flipped the sign from closed to open, the place was empty. That wasn't unusual. On weekdays the customers came in scattered. Most of them familiar faces. Sienna brewed a fresh pot of coffee, even though she knew she might end up pouring it down the sink at day's end. She checked the refrigerator, made notes of what was running low, then started wiping tables. Even though they'd been clean since the night before, her hands needed something to do while her mind sprinted through numbers. By noon, she climbed the narrow staircase behind the café up to the sea, small 2-bedroom apartment right above the shop. Her mother, Rose, lay in bed, the blanket pulled to her chest, her skin so pale it was almost translucent. Her breathing was heavy, each breath an effort. The room held a faint mix of medicine and lavender from the sachet Sienna had hung at the head of the bed, trying to cover the smell of sickness. Lung cancer had spread to her liver 3 months ago. The doctor had stopped using the word recovery a long time ago. Now they only spoke of time left and quality of life. Rose opened her eyes at the sound of her daughter's footsteps. She tried to smile, but it couldn't hide the exhaustion in her gaze. "Don't worry about me. Was the café busy?" Rose asked weakly. Sienna swallowed, kept her voice steady. "It was so busy, Mom." "You just rest." The lie slipped out so easily that she wondered how many times she'd already told it. Rose nodded, her eyes already drifting closed. "My good girl," she whispered before sinking into sleep. Sienna stood there watching her for a long time. 12 years earlier she'd been a 15-year-old in foster care for the 5th time. 6 years of temporary houses, unfamiliar faces, broken promises. "Hard date to get close to," they'd said, "doesn't fit in." Then Rose had appeared with a small café and a heart bigger than Brooklyn. "You don't have anything wrong with you," Rose had told her. "You just need someone who won't give up on you." 12 years later, Rose still hadn't given up, and Sienna would never give up on her. On her way back downstairs, she paused at the kitchen table, where a white envelope sat mixed into the stack of mail. Sienna had deliberately left it unopened for 3 days, but today she couldn't hide from it anymore. Inside was the hospital bill, $15,000 for the next round of chemotherapy. The insurance covered 40%. That left $9,000. She had $240 in the register and a café that was slowly dying. Sienna folded the bill, slid it into the bottom drawer, where Rose would never find it. Then she went back down to the café and smiled at the first customer of the day, as if everything was fine. Evening came slowly at 9:47 p.m. The KFC was nearly empty, with only one customer left in the back corner booth. An old man with white hair, a face lined with wrinkles, and eyes that were still strangely sharp, Mr. Castellano as she'd always called him. He'd come every Tuesday and Thursday night for 8 months, always the same seat, always unsweetened green tea, sometimes a slice of sliced toast. He left a tip of exactly 15%, never more, never less, as if he'd calculated every cent. Lately he'd begun asking about Rose. "Is your mother doing better?" His voice was gentle, sincerely concerned, and Sienna couldn't understand why a stranger would pay that much attention to her life. She glanced at the clock on the wall. 9:47, 13 minutes until closing. Sienna picked up the rag and wiped the rag counter for the 3rd time in 10 minutes. Not because it was dirty, but because her hands needed something to do, while her mind spun itself sick on numbers. $240, $380, $9,000, $15,000. The figures circled like a cruel dance with no end. Outside the glass door, rain began to pour. Not a soft drizzle, but big, heavy drops that slapped the window as if they wanted to break their way inside. Streetlights blurred through the sheet of water, turning Little Italy into a watercolor painting that was melting as you watched it. Sienna thought about closing early. Nobody was going to come in now. Not in weather like this. She glanced toward Mr. Castellano. He was still sitting there, his newspaper neatly folded on the table, his tea long gone cold. He stared out the window with the expression of someone waiting for something. Then the café door flew open. 3 masked men burst in, the cold rain following them like a curse. "Register now." The youngest one screamed, his gun shaking wildly in his hand. The sound of his voice cracked through the quiet café like thunder splitting the sky. Sienna's heart jumped into her throat. Her hand trembled as she reached for the register, ready to give them whatever they wanted. Money could be replaced, lives couldn't. But then something shifted. The youngest robber, the one whose hands shook so badly he could barely hold the weapon steady, turned away from the counter. His eyes, visible through the holes in his mask, scanned the café. They landed on the back booth, on the old man sitting there, silent and still, watching everything unfold with those sharp grey eyes. "You," the youngest robber shouted, swinging his gun toward Vincent. "Empty your pockets, everything now." Time seemed to slow down. Sienna saw the gun pointed at Mr. Castellano. She saw the old man's face, calm despite the danger. She saw the robber's finger tightening on the trigger. His panic made him unpredictable, dangerous. And in that fraction of a second, Sienna made a choice that defied logic, that ignored every survival instinct screaming in her brain. She stepped out from behind the counter and moved between the gun and Vincent Castellano. "Take the money," she said, her voice surprisingly steady despite the terror coursing through her veins. "Take all of it. Just leave him alone, please." The youngest robber stared at her, his eyes wide with confusion and fear. "What are you doing? Move." "No," Sienna said quietly. "You can have everything in that register. You can have my wallet. You can have anything you want. But you are not going to hurt him." The wail of police sirens rose from somewhere a few blocks away, growing louder with each passing second. The leader of the group, the one who'd been emptying the register, grabbed the youngest robber's arm. "We're done here. Let's go." But the youngest one was panicking now, his gun still pointed at Sienna, his finger still on the trigger. "She is in the way. She saw our faces. We're wearing masks. You idiot. Come on." The leader yanked him toward the door. For one eternal second, Sienna genuinely believed she was going to die. She could see it in the youngest robber's eyes, the fear and desperation that made people do terrible things. His finger twitched on the trigger, and then the leader shoved him hard, breaking his aim, and the three men burst out into the rain, disappearing into the night as quickly as they'd appeared. The Café fell into silence. Only the rain hammering against windows and Sienna's ragged breathing remained. Her legs gave out and she collapsed against the nearest table. Behind her, Vincent rose. From his booth, when she turned, he was studying her with those sharp grey eyes. "Why did you do that?" he asked softly. Sienna laughed, half-sob. "I don't know. I couldn't let them hurt you." Vincent moved closer. "You don't know who I am, do you? You are Mr. Castellano. You come here twice a week. You drink green tea." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "That is all you know. That is all I need to know. You don't know who I am, do you?" Sienna pushed herself upright. "Are you okay? Did they hurt you?" "Number thanks to you." He reached into his coat and pulled out a business card. "If you ever need anything, you call this number." She glanced at the card. Simple, elegant. Just a name and phone number. "I can't accept this. You already have. When someone saves your life, it creates a bond, a debt of honor that can never be fully repaid." He moved toward the door, then looked back. "You have a rare heart, Miss Hayes. This world, that is more precious than gold." Then he was gone, disappearing into the storm. She locked the door, turned off the lights, and climbed the stairs. Rose was still sleeping. Sienna collapsed on the couch and finally let herself cry. Not from fear, though she had reason. Not from stress, though God knew she carried enough. She cried because she was exhausted. Exhausted from fighting. Exhausted from pretending. Exhausted from pretending. Watching her mother fade while she stood helpless. She fell asleep on that couch, the business card clutched in her hand. She dreamed of rain and gunfire and an old man with knowing eyes. When she woke the next morning, someone was pounding on the Café door. Sienna stumbled downstairs, half asleep, and pulled it open. 4 men in expensive black suits stood outside. Behind them was a black SUV with tinted windows. The man in front was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair touched with silver. His grey eyes were storm-coloured. He was possibly the most intimidating person Sienna had ever encountered, and she'd grown up in foster care. She knew intimidating Sienna Hayes, he asked. His voice was deep, controlled. "Yes." He extended his hand. "My name is Dante Castellano. Vincent Castellano is my father. You saved his life last night." Sienna's brain struggled to process this. I didn't really do anything. "You placed yourself between my father and a loaded weapon," Dante interrupted. "That is everything." He gestured to the 4 men. "These men will be stationed outside your establishment. 24 hours. They'll ensure nothing like last night happens again." "Wait, I can't afford." "You are not paying," Dante said firmly. "This is not negotiable. You've created a debt of honor. My family owes you." Before Sienna could respond, one of the men handed her an envelope. Inside was more cash than she'd seen in months. "For the register and damages," Dante explained. "This is too much. It is the beginning." Dante handed her another envelope. "For your mother's medical expenses." Sienna opened it with shaking hands. 50,000. Her knees nearly gave out. "My father learned about your situation. He wants to help." "How did he know?" "My father pays attention." Dante's expression softened slightly. "He'd like to see you today, if possible." I can't leave my mother. We've arranged a private nurse. She is on her way up now. As if on cue, footsteps sounded on the stairs, followed by a knock. You did what? The nurse comes recommended by my father's personal physician. Your mother will be in excellent hands. What could she say? How did you argue with people who rearranged the world? An hour later, after checking on Rose and meeting Patricia, the kind-faced nurse, Sienna found herself in a luxury sedan, heading to Brooklyn Heights. The house was massive, quietly powerful, old money and older secrets. A guard escorted her through marble halls to a study that smelled like leather and aged whiskey. Vincent sat in a wing-back chair near the fireplace, a blanket across his lap. He looked frailer here than in the Café, armor removed. Sienna, he said, brightening. Thank you for coming, Mr. Castellano. I don't understand what is happening. Your son, the guards, the money. Please, sit. You deserve an explanation. Anyone would have done the same thing, Sienna said. Most people would have frozen, or run, or decided it wasn't their concern. You acted without hesitation. That is remarkable. Vincent studied her. Let me tell you something. 40 years ago, I started with $10,000 and built Castellano Industries into a multi-billion-dollar empire, real estate, investments. Development, I shaped this city. You are a billionaire, Sienna said quietly. Yes, though after my wife passed 3 years ago, I stepped back. I wanted to be just a man again. Your cafe was perfect. Nobody knew me there. And then I got involved. No, you saved it. In my world, everything is a transaction. People are kind because it benefits them. Then I meet you, drowning in debt, struggling to save your mother, and you still risk your life for a stranger. I didn't do anything special. You did everything special. You reminded me of my wife. That is why this matters. In Italian tradition, when you save someone's life, you create debito di onor, a debt of honor that binds families. I don't want to obligate you, Sienna protested. I don't want anything from you. I know, Vincent said with a sad smile. That is exactly why I want to give you everything. Over the next hour, Vincent explained his family's tradition, their history, their values. He told her about his son Dante, a brilliant businessman who'd taken Castellano Industries to even greater heights. But he also told her about the cost of that success. My son is lost, Vincent said quietly. He has been lost since his mother died. He runs the company with absolute efficiency, but he is hollow inside, no joy, no hope, just duty and obligation. He is forgotten how to trust anything except power and control. Why are you telling me this? Sienna asked. Because yesterday, when Dante learned what you did, I saw something in his eyes I haven't seen in 3 years. Interest, curiosity, maybe even the beginning of respect. Vincent smiled slightly. You fascinate him, Sienna, and my son is not easily fascinated. Sienna felt her cheeks warm again. I am sure he meets plenty of interesting people. He meets powerful people, influential people, wealthy people, Vincent corrected. But genuine people, people with actual hearts, those are rare in his world, non-existent, actually. Before Sienna could respond, the study door opened and Dante entered. He changed from his suit into dark jeans and a black shirt, somehow looking both more relaxed and more dangerous. Filled the room. Sienna, he acknowledged with a slight nod. I hope my father hasn't been overwhelming you with our family drama. Just providing context, Vincent said dryly. Dante moved to the bar cart and poured himself 2 fingers of whiskey. Father likes to romanticize things. The truth is simpler. You saved his life. We're grateful. We're ensuring your safety, compensating you appropriately. That is all. Dante, Vincent said, his voice carrying a warning. What? Dante took a sip of his drink. You want me to pretend this is some fairy tale? She is a waitress who made a brave choice. We're a wealthy family honoring a debt. It is transactional. Is it? Vincent challenged. Then why did you personally go to her cafe this morning? Why didn't you just send the guards? Why did you arrange for the nurse yourself? Something flickered across Dante's face, annoyance, maybe embarrassment. Because you asked me to. No, Vincent said quietly. I suggested it. You chose to do it personally. Just like you chose to look into her situation. Just like you chose to cover her mother's medical expenses without being thorough. Asked. Dante's jaw tightened. This conversation is pointless. This conversation is necessary, Vincent countered. You are so busy building walls that you can't see when someone is trying to reach you. Dante set his glass down hard enough that the sound echoed through the study. With all due respect, Father, my walls have kept this family safe for 3 years. They've kept the company profitable. They've kept our enemies at bay. Forgive me if I don't tear them down for a stranger. She is not a stranger, Vincent said softly. Not anymore. She is family now. That is what debito d'onor means. The room fell silent. Sienna felt like she'd been dropped into the middle of an argument that had been brewing for years. She cleared her throat nervously. I should probably go. I don't want to. I don't intrude on. No, both men said simultaneously. They looked at each other, then back at her. Please stay, Vincent said gently. We need to discuss the arrangements. Arrangements? Sienna asked. Dante ran a hand through his hair, a gesture that seemed uncharacteristically vulnerable. The guards will remain at your café indefinitely. The nurse will come every day to care for your mother. Medical expenses will be covered. Your café's rent and utilities will be paid through my company. You'll receive a monthly stipend to cover your personal expenses. Sienna's mouth fell open. I can't accept all that. It is too much. You can and you will, Dante said firmly. This is not charity, Miss Hayes. This is obligation. This is honor. In my world, these things matter. In any world, these things should matter, Vincent added quietly. Sienna looked between them, seeing the father who wanted to connect with his son and the son who'd forgotten how to let anyone close. What do you want from me? She asked. Nothing, Dante said immediately. Everything, Vincent said at the same time. They looked at each other again. Dante's expression was closed, defensive. Vincent's was hopeful, almost pleading. I want you to give him a chance, Vincent said finally, looking at Sienna. Not as a billionaire, not as the head of Castellano Industries, just as a man, because I think you might be the only person who can remind him of who he used to be, Father, Dante said, his voice low and warning. No, Vincent said firmly. I am dying, Dante. The cancer is back. The doctors give me 6 months, maybe less. The color drained from Dante's face. What? I was going to tell you today, Vincent said quietly. That is why I asked you to come. But then Sienna saved my life, and I realized something. I don't have time to wait for you to figure this out on your own. I don't have time to watch you slowly disappear into duty and obligation. I need to know you'll be okay when I am gone, that you'll have someone who sees you, really sees you. Dante stared at his father, his carefully constructed walls crumbling. You are not serious. I wish I wasn't, Vincent said, his voice breaking. But I am, and I am asking you, as your father, to let someone in to try. The study fell into heavy silence. Sienna felt like she shouldn't be here, shouldn't be witnessing this intimate, painful moment. But she also understood that she was already part of it, whether she'd chosen to be or not. Dante looked at her, his grey eyes filled with something she couldn't quite name. Grief, anger, maybe fear. This isn't fair to her, he said to his father. You are using your illness to manipulate the situation. I am using my illness to speak the truth, Vincent replied. Something I should have done 3 years ago when your mother died and you locked yourself away. I let you grieve in your own way, respected your distance. But I can't do that anymore. I won't leave this world watching you disappear into darkness. Dante's hands clenched into fists at his sides. You think a waitress from Brooklyn is going to save me? You think her kindness is going to magically fix everything? I think she has already changed you, Vincent said quietly. I saw it in your eyes this morning. For the first time in 3 years, you were interested in someone beyond their utility to the business. You cared, even if you won't admit it. Sienna stood up, her heart pounding. Mr. Castellano, I appreciate everything you've done for me and my mother. I truly do. But I can't be someone's salvation project. I have my own life, problems, my own grief. I can't fix your son. I am not asking you to fix him, Vincent said gently. I am asking you to know him, to let him know you, to be patient while he remembers how to be human again. That is not fair to either of us, Sienna said firmly. You can't force connection. You can't manufacture relationship. Either it happens naturally or it doesn't happen at all. Vincent smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes. Smart girl, you are absolutely right. I am just a desperate old man trying to secure his son's happiness before I go. Forgive me for overstepping. Sienna softened. There is nothing to forgive. You love your son, that is beautiful, but you have to let him choose his own path. Even if that path leads him nowhere. Vincent asked. Even then, Sienna confirmed. She turned to Dante, who'd been silent through this entire exchange. For what it is worth, I think your father is wrong. You are not lost, you are grieving. There is a difference, and grief doesn't follow anyone's timeline. Something shifted in Dante's expression. The defensiveness faded slightly, replaced by surprise, maybe even gratitude. Thank you, he said quietly. Sienna nodded. I should go. My mother will be wondering where I am. Of course, Vincent said. Dante, would you drive Miss Hayes home? Dante opened his mouth, probably to refuse, then seemed to think better of it. Fine, let's go. The drive back to Little Italy was awkward and silent. Sienna sat in the passenger seat of Dante's sleek black Mercedes, watching the city pass by outside her window. The leather seats were the butter soft, the kind of luxury she'd only seen in magazines. The car probably cost more than her Café was worth, maybe more than everything she owned combined. It was a stark reminder of the massive gulf between their worlds. Dante drove with the same controlled intensity he seemed to bring to everything else, his hands steady on the wheel, his eyes on the road. He navigated through Brooklyn traffic with practiced ease, never hesitating, never second-guessing. Everything about him screamed control, power, precision. He was a man who'd spent his entire life knowing exactly what he wanted and exactly how to get it. Sienna, on the other hand, had spent her entire life just trying to survive. The silence stretched between them, thick and uncomfortable. Sienna searched for something to say, some way to break the tension, but every thought that crossed her mind seemed inadequate. What do I say? You say to a billionaire whose father just told him he is dying. What comfort could she possibly offer? Finally, as they neared her café, Sienna broke the silence. I am sorry about your father. Dante's jaw tightened visibly. His knuckles went white on the steering wheel. I don't want your pity. Good, Sienna said firmly. Because I am not offering pity, I am offering condolences. There is a difference. He glanced at her, surprise flickering across his face again. Those grey eyes, so guarded and controlled, showed a crack of genuine emotion before the walls came back up. You are not what I expected. What did you expect? Sienna asked, genuinely curious. Someone scared or greedy or both. Dante pulled the car to a stop in front of the café, but didn't immediately unlock the doors. Most people who interact with my family want something. Money, power, connection, access to our network, a chance to climb the social ladder. But you don't seem to want anything. I want my mother to live, Sienna said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. I want the café to survive. I want to sleep through the night without waking up terrified about bills I can't pay. Want to stop feeling like I am drowning every single day. Those are the things I want. Not your money, not your power, not your connections, just peace. Just a chance to breathe without feeling light. The world is crushing me. Dante studied her for a long moment, his expression unreadable. She could see him processing, analyzing, trying to fit her into some category that made sense in his worldview. But she didn't fit, wasn't after his money. She wasn't trying to manipulate him. She was just exhausted and honest and real, and that clearly confused him. My father was right about one thing, Dante said finally. You are unusual. Is that a compliment? Sienna asked with a slight smile. I am not sure yet, Dante admitted. Then something unexpected happened. The corner of his mouth twitched upward, not quite a full smile but close. The tiniest crack in his armor, but it might be. Sienna reached for the door handle, then paused. She looked back at Dante, at this complicated, grieving, guarded man who was trying so hard to keep the world at arm's length. Your father loves you very much. I know you are angry at him for springing his illness on you like that, for trying to manipulate the situation with me, for playing puppeteer with both our lives. But at least you have time to talk to him, time to make peace, time to say all the things that need to be said before it is too late. Her voice broke slightly. My mother might not have that much time. Despite the treatments, despite your father's generosity, I know the statistics, I know the odds. Every day I wake up wondering if this is the day I lose her. So maybe don't waste the time you have left being angry. Maybe just be grateful you got the warning, that you have a chance to say goodbye. Not everyone gets that. She got out of the car before Dante could respond, before she could see his reaction, before the tears threatening to spill could actually fall. But as she walked toward the café door, she heard his voice call out behind her, Sienna. She turned. He was standing beside the car now, one hand on the open door, looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read, vulnerability maybe, or recognition, like he was seeing her, really seeing her for the first time. Thank you, he said simply, for being honest. Most people aren't. Most people probably haven't had the life I've had, Sienna replied. Foster care teaches you that lying doesn't help anything. It just delays the inevitable. So I stopped lying, even when the truth is hard. Dante nodded slowly. Maybe I could learn something from that. Maybe, Sienna agreed. Then she smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. But first, you should probably learn how to accept a compliment without looking like someone just punched you. That surprised a laugh out of him. A short, sharp sound that seemed to surprise him as much as it surprised her. Fair point. Good night, Dante, Sienna said. Good night, Sienna, he replied. She walked into the café, and through the window she watched him stand there for a long moment, just looking at the building. Then he got back in his car and drove away, but something had changed. Some invisible barrier between them had cracked just slightly. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Over the next 2 weeks, life settled into a strange new normal. The 4 guards remained posted outside the café, turning away anyone who looked remotely suspicious. Their presence was both reassuring and unsettling. Sienna still wasn't used to having protection. It felt surreal, like she'd accidentally stepped into someone else's life. Patricia, the nurse, came every day to care for Rose, who seemed to be getting slightly stronger with the new medications and better care. The change was remarkable. Rose had more energy, more color in her cheeks. She could sit up for longer periods. She could eat without feeling nauseous. The pain medication was better, more targeted, less sedating. For the first time in months, Sienna could see her mother, not just the illness consuming her. The café's business actually improved. Apparently, having armed guards outside made people curious enough to stop in and see what was so special about this little place. Foot traffic increased. Regulars started coming more frequently. New customers discovered them. The cash register that had held a pitiful $240 2 weeks ago now regularly closed out with 4 or 5 times that amount. Sienna paid the food invoice and the rent and the electric bill. She bought groceries without checking prices, a luxury she'd never experienced. She replaced the cracked vinyl chairs with sturdy, new ones. She had the linoleum floor refinished, revealing the original pattern underneath decades of wear. She updated the menu board, adding new items, experimenting with recipes Rose had always wanted to try but couldn't afford to test. Small things, but they made a huge difference. The café started to feel alive, again vibrant, hopeful. For the first time in years, Sienna could breathe without the constant weight of anxiety crushing her chest. She could plan for tomorrow without wondering if there would even be a tomorrow. But something unexpected was happening too. Dante kept coming back. It started small. He'd stop by the café after dropping off his father for one of his regular visits. He'd order coffee, sit at the counter, work on his laptop for an hour. He never said much. Neither said much did Sienna. She'd serve other customers, wipe tables, refill coffee, while he typed away on spreadsheets and answered emails. But there was something comfortable about his presence, something steady, like a familiar piece of furniture that just belonged in the room. At first, Sienna thought he was just checking on his father's investment, making sure the café was actually improving, that the money wasn't being wasted. But as the days passed, she realized it was vast. More than that, he seemed to relax here. His shoulders would drop slightly when he walked through the door. His jaw would unclench. He'd actually look up from his computer and watch the Casey's rhythm, the dance of customers and conversations and community that happened naturally in this space. One afternoon, during a lull between lunch and dinner rush, Sienna found herself standing at the counter folding napkins while Dante worked nearby. The silence between them had become comfortable, familiar. Then, without looking up from his computer, Dante spoke. "This place is special," he said quietly. Sienna paused in her folding. "What do you mean?" "This café, it is not just a business, it is a sanctuary." He closed his laptop and looked at her directly. "I've watched people come in here for 2 weeks. Every single person who walks through that door is greeted like family. Mrs. Delgado from the flower shop brings you roses every Thursday. A construction crew from the site down the street knows you have their sandwiches ready before they even order. The teenage kid who comes in after school to do homework, you always give him free refills and pretend not to notice when he is struggling with math." Sienna felt her cheeks warm. "I just try to take care of people." "Exactly," Dante said. "That is the difference. Most businesses try to extract value from customers. You try to give value to people. There is a distinction there that matters." "That is how my mother raised me," Sienna said softly. "She always said the cafe wasn't about making money. It was about making community. If we took care of people, they'd take care of us, and she was right. Every person who comes through that door has helped us at some point. Mrs. Delgado gave us flowers for free when my mother first got sick and couldn't afford them. The construction crew repaired our broken window without charging us. The teenager's mother is a lawyer who helped us with a dispute with our landlord for free. It is a circle. We give, they give, everyone benefits." Dante was quiet for a long moment. "I've spent 10 years building a business empire on the principle of maximizing profit, finding efficiencies, cutting costs, increasing margins, and it worked. We're incredibly successful, but sitting here watching this, I realize we've lost something important in that process." "What is that?" Sienna asked. "Humanity," Dante said simply. "Connection, purpose beyond profit. My father built Castellano Industries to improve neighborhoods, to create opportunities, to lift communities somewhere along the same way. After my mother died and I took over, it became just about numbers, about winning, about being the best. But what is the point of being the best if you are doing it alone?" Sienna set down the napkins and moved to sit across from him. "You are not alone. You have your father, you have your company, your employees." "Employees aren't family," Dante said. "They respect me because I pay them. They follow me because I am the boss. But do they care about me as a person? Do I even let them?" He shook his head. "My father was right. I am lost. I've been lost for 3 years. I just kept moving so fast I didn't have to acknowledge it." "And now?" Sienna asked gently. "Now my father is dying, and I am being forced to stop moving long enough to feel something." Dante's voice cracked slightly, "and it is terrifying." Without thinking, Sienna reached across the counter and placed her hand over his. The gesture surprised both of them. Dante stared at their joined hands like he was seeing a miracle. "You don't have to be terrified alone," she said softly. "Why are you being kind to me?" Dante asked, his voice raw with emotion. "I've done nothing to deserve it. I was dismissive when we first met. I called you a transaction. I've been cold and closed off. Why do you keep trying?" "Because I know what it is like to be lost," Sienna said. "I spent 6 years in foster care, being shuffled from house to house, never belonging anywhere, never being wanted. Then my mother saw me. Really saw me, not the troubled foster kid everyone else saw. She saw the person I could become if someone just gave me a chance. So she took a chance on me, and it changed my entire life. Tears welled in her eyes. So when I look at you, I don't see a cold billionaire. I see someone who is hurting, someone who has forgotten how to let people in, someone who deserves a chance. Just like I did. Dante's eyes glistened with unshed tears. I don't know how to do this, how to let someone in, how to be vulnerable. It feels like weakness. It is not weakness, Sienna said firmly. It is courage, being vulnerable, letting people see your pain, asking for help. That takes more strength than building walls and pretending you don't need anyone. My mother used to say something similar, Dante said quietly. She'd tell me that real power isn't about control. It is about connection. I never really understood what she meant, but sitting here, talking to you, I think I am starting to. They sat in silence for a while, hands still joined across the counter, neither of them wanting to break the moment outside. Brooklyn moved at its usual frenetic pace. Inside Rosie's kitchen seemed to slow down, creating a small pocket of peace in the chaos. Finally, Dante spoke again. Can I ask you something? Of course. That night when you stepped in front of the gun, what were you thinking? Sienna considered the question, honestly. I wasn't thinking, it was pure instinct. I saw someone in danger, and my body moved before my brain could stop it. It wasn't bravery. It was probably stupidity. It was both, Dante said with a slight smile. Bravery and stupidity often look the same in the moment. Fair point, Sienna laughed. But afterward, Dante continued, when you realized what you'd done, what you'd risked, did you regret it? No, Sienna said immediately. I could never regret trying to protect someone. Even if I'd been shot, even if I'd died, I wouldn't have regretted it. Because I would have died being the person I died. Want to be someone who stands up, someone who protects the vulnerable, someone who chooses courage over safety. Dante's expression shifted, something deep and profound moving across his features. You are remarkable. You know that, right? Sienna felt herself blushing. I am just me. Exactly, Dante said. And that is remarkable. Then one evening after Vincent had left and the cafe was closing, Dante stayed behind. I need to tell you something, he said, his voice unusually hesitant. Sienna looked up from wiping tables. Okay, my father's right about me. I've been lost since my mother died. Dante set his coffee cup down carefully. She was the heart of our family. She kept us grounded. She reminded us that money, power weren't the important things, and when she died, I didn't know how to process it. So I didn't. I just worked. I expanded the company. I made deal after deal after deal. I convinced myself that if I just kept moving, kept achieving, I wouldn't have to feel anything. Sienna set down her rag and moved to sit across from him. That sounds exhausting. It is, Dante admitted. It is also empty. I have everything, money, influence, respect, but I don't have anything that matters, not really. Your father matters, Sienna said gently. I know, Dante said, his voice thick, and I am going to lose him, just like I lost her, and this time I'll be completely alone. Sienna reached across the counter and took his hand. The gesture surprised both of them. You don't have to be alone. Dante looked down at their joined hands, then up at her face. Why are you being kind to me? I've been cold to you, dismissive. I called you a transaction. Because hurt people, Sienna said simply, and healing people heal people. I am choosing to be healing. Something broke open in Dante's expression. The walls he'd built so carefully started to crack. I don't know how to do this, how to let someone in. Neither do I, Sienna admitted. I spent 6 years in foster care learning not to get attached, learning not to hope. And then my mother showed up and changed everything. She taught me that sometimes taking a risk on someone is worth it, even if it scares you. Are you taking a risk on me? Dante asked quietly. Sienna smiled. I stepped between you and a gun before I even knew your name. I think that ship has sailed. Dante laughed. Actually laughed. It was a rusty sound, like something that hadn't been used in years, but it was real, Fair point. From that night on, things changed. Dante started coming to the café every evening, sometimes with Vincent, sometimes alone. They'd talk about everything and nothing, about his mother and her foster care experience, about building companies and building families, about loss and hope and fear and courage. Slowly, carefully, they built something neither of them had names for, not quite friendship, not yet romance, but connection, real, genuine connection. Vincent watched it happen with a smile on his face. His health was declining rapidly now. The cancer was aggressive and the treatments weren't working, but he seemed at peace. "You gave me a gift," he told Sienna one evening, when Dante had stepped away to take a phone call. "You gave me hope that my son will be okay when I am gone." "He is stronger than you think," Sienna said. "I know," Vincent replied, "but strength isn't enough. You need heart too, and you are teaching him how to have both." 3 months after the robbery, Vincent Castellano was admitted to the hospital. The doctors said it was a matter of days. Dante practically lived at the hospital, leaving only for essential business. Sienna visited every day after closing the café. One evening, she arrived to find Dante sitting beside his father's bed, holding Vincent's hand, tears streaming down his face. It was the first time she'd seen him cry. "He is sleeping," Dante said, his voice raw, "but he won't wake up again. This is it." Sienna sat on the other side of the bed and took Vincent's other hand. "Then we'll be with him, so he is not alone." They sat for hours. Around midnight, Vincent's eyes fluttered open. He looked at his son, then at Sienna, and smiled weakly. "My two favorite people," he whispered. "Dad," Dante said, his voice breaking, "I love you. I am sorry." "No apologies," Vincent interrupted gently. "Just gratitude. I got to see you come back to life. That is all I wanted." He looked at Sienna. "Thank you for saving me, for saving him. Thank you for choosing my café," Sienna said through tears. "For seeing me, for giving my mother a chance." Vincent's smile widened. "Take care of each other. Don't let fear win. Just love each other." "Yes, father," Dante whispered. Vincent's eyes closed. His breathing grew shallow, and at 1:17 a.m., with his son holding one hand and the woman who'd saved his life holding the other, Vincent Castellano took his last breath. The funeral was massive. Hundreds of people came to pay respects to the billionaire who'd shaped Brooklyn's skyline. But Sienna barely noticed them. She stood beside Dante throughout the day, hand in his, offering silent support. He didn't speak, didn't cry, just stood there, playing the role he'd perfected over years. But that night, after everyone had left, Dante finally broke. Sienna found him in the study sitting in his father's chair. She didn't say anything, just sat beside him and waited. "I don't know how to do this," Dante finally said. "How to live without him. One day at a time," Sienna said gently. "What if I forget everything he tried to teach me?" "You won't," Sienna said firmly, "because I won't let you. You are not alone." Dante pulled her into his arms and finally let himself cry, really cry, years of suppressed grief pouring out, and Sienna held him, whispering that it would be okay, that she was here. They stayed like that for hours, until exhaustion pulled them both into sleep, still wrapped in each other's arms. Over the next months, they healed together. Dante started therapy. He delegated more at work. He laughed more, smiled more, lived more. And somewhere in that process, friendship became something deeper. There wasn't a specific moment. It was gradual, natural, inevitable, like two plants growing toward the same light. Rose's health stabilized, and the treatments were working. The doctors started using words like remission and long-term prognosis. "He is good for you," Rose said one evening, watching them together. "He sees you, the real you. He is stubborn and controlling," Sienna said with a smile. "So are you," Rose grinned. Perfect match. A year after that rainy November night, Dante proposed. Not with a ring, not with roses, not with any of the traditional romantic gestures you see in movies. He proposed with a key, and it was Aus key, perfect in its honesty. They were closing the KFF together, something that had become their nightly ritual. Dante would help her wipe tables, count the register, lock up. It had started as him simply hanging around, reluctant to go home to his empty mansion. Then it evolved into him actually helping, learning the rhythms of the business. He'd learned how to make coffee, though he was still comically terrible at terrible. Latte art, he'd learned which customers liked their sandwiches cut diagonally versus straight across. He'd learned that Mrs. Delgado always ordered chamomile tea, but never drank it. She just liked the smell and the company. On this particular night, exactly 1 year to the day since the robbery, Sienna had just finished counting the register when she turned to find Dante standing there, looking unusually nervous. Hands were in his pockets, his posture tense. For a man who commanded boardrooms full of executives without breaking a sweat, he looked absolutely terrified. "Are you okay?" Sienna asked. "I need to give you something," Dante said, his voice tight. He pulled his hand from his pocket and held out a small silver key. It caught the overhead lights, glinting softly in the dimness of the closed café. "What is this?" Sienna asked, taking the key from his palm. It was warm from his pocket, solid and real in her hand. "It is a key to my house," Dante said. "Our house, if you want it to be." He took a deep breath, the words coming out in a rush like he'd been rehearsing them. "I know it is fast. I know we should probably date longer, do things the traditional way, wait the appropriate amount of time, but I don't want to waste time anymore. Life's too short. I learned that from my father, so I am asking you to move in with me, to build a life with me, to be my family." His voice softened. "I am asking you to come home with me, not to my house, but to make a home together. Does that make sense?" Sienna's eyes filled with tears. Her heart was pounding so hard, she could feel it in her throat. "That is not a proposal." "I know," Dante said with a smile, seeming to relax slightly. "That comes later, after you've seen me at my worst, after you've lived with my crazy hours and terrible cooking and tendency to work too much, after you've experienced my morning grumpiness and my insistence on organizing everything alphabetically, after you are absolutely sure you can tolerate me for the rest of your life. Then I'll ask you to marry me. But first I want you to come home with me. I want you to know, really know, what you are getting into before you make any permanent decisions." Sienna laughed through her tears. "You really are terrible at this romantic stuff." "I know," Dante admitted, his smile widening. "I am a work in progress, but I am trying for you, always for you." He stepped closer, taking her free hand in his. "I spent 3 years building walls, Sienna, keeping everyone at a distance, convincing myself I was fine alone. Then you walked into my life. Rather, I walked into yours, and you demolished every wall I'd built. You showed me that being vulnerable isn't weakness, that needing someone isn't failure, that letting people in is the only way to actually live, not just exist." "Dante," Sienna whispered, overwhelmed. "I am not perfect," he continued. "I am still learning how to be open, how to communicate, how to not retreat into work when things get difficult. But I want to learn with you, because you make me want to be better, not because you demand it, but because you believe I can be." Sienna looked down at the key in her hand, then back at Dante's face. His grey eyes, usually so guarded, were completely opened, vulnerable, hopeful, terrified. "Okay," she said simply, "okay." Dante's expression was a mix of hope and disbelief. "Okay, I'll move in with you. Okay, I'll build a life with you. Okay to all of it." She stepped closer, rising on her toes to kiss him softly. "But I am keeping the Café. It is my mother's legacy. It is my mother's legacy. Mine. I am not giving it up." "I wouldn't ask you to," Dante said, wrapping his arms around her waist and pulling her close. "In fact, I was thinking we could expand, open a few more locations, keep the same feel, the same heart, but share it with more neighborhoods, make it a real Brooklyn institution." "You want to turn Rosie's Kitchen into a chain?" Sienna asked skeptically, pulling back to look at him. "I want to share what your mother built with the world," Dante corrected. "I want more people to experience what my father experienced here. A place where everyone is welcome, where a billionaire can sit next to a construction worker and both feel at home, where kindness matters more than money, where community is valued above profit. He paused. Your mother created something special. Let's honor that by spreading it, not diluting it, not corporatizing it, just sharing it. Sienna thought about it, her mind racing through possibilities and concerns. Okay, but we do it my way. No cutting corners, no sacrificing quality for profit. Every location has to feel like home. Every employee has to be treated like family. We expand slowly, carefully, making sure each new cafe has the same heart as this one. Deal, Dante agreed immediately. You run the operations, I'll handle the business side. Partnership. Partnership, Sienna repeated, loving the sound of it. The word felt solid, equal, right. They stood there in the empty café, holding each other, surrounded by the smells of coffee and fresh bread, and decades of memories. Outside, the 4 guards remained at their posts, still protecting her even though the threat had long since passed. They'd become fixtures, friendly faces that the neighborhood had embraced. Inside, the café that had been slowly dying was alive again, thriving, filled with hope and possibility and love. $240, Dante said softly, his lips against her hair. That is all those robbers wanted that night. Sienna smiled against his chest, feeling his heartbeat steady under her cheek. Best $240 I ever lost. It brought me you, Dante said, pulling back to look at her face. It brought me back to life. It gave me a second chance at happiness. So yeah, best $240 anyone ever lost. They locked up the café and walked hand in hand to his car. Tomorrow, they'd start planning the expansion. Tomorrow, they'd tell Rose about the move, though she'd probably just smile and say she knew it was coming tomorrow. They'd take the next step in building their future together. But tonight, they just drove through Brooklyn, the city lights blurring past the windows, heading toward home. Together. 6 months later, Dante proposed properly. On the anniversary of the night they met, in the back booth of Rose's kitchen where his father used to sit. The K-father used to sit. The K-faced was closed, but he'd arranged for Farce, their closest friends and family, to be hiding in the kitchen, waiting for the big moment. Sienna thought they were just having a quiet dinner together. She'd made Vincent's favorite meal, the one he used to order twice a week. Green tea and toast seemed too simple for a special dinner. She'd expanded it into a full Italian feast. When they'd finished eating and were sitting with coffee, Dante suddenly got down on one knee right there in the booth. Sienna Hayes, he said, pulling out a ring box. You've lived with me for 6 months now. You've seen me at my worst. You've dealt with my 6 a.m. alarm and my terrible singing in the shower, experienced my obsessive need to organize the kitchen cabinets, and my inability to remember to take out the trash. You know that I work too much and talk too little. You know all my flaws, weaknesses, all my broken pieces. His voice thickened with emotion. And somehow, impossibly, you still choose to be with me. You still smile when I walk through the door. You still reach for my hand. You still make me feel like I am still enough, just as I am. Tears were already streaming down Sienna's face. So I am asking you now, officially, permanently, Dante continued. Will you marry me? Will you be my family? Will you let me spend the rest of my life trying to deserve the gift of your love? Yes, Sienna sobbed. Yes, yes, yes. Dante slipped the ring on her finger, and the entire café exploded with noise as their friends and family burst from the kitchen, cheering and crying and celebrating. Rose was there, looking healthier than she had in years, crying tears of joy. Patricia was there with her husband. Mrs. Delgado was there with flowers. The construction crew was there. Even the 4 guards who'd protected the Café for over a year came in to offer their congratulations. The wedding itself, 3 months later, was small but perfect. They held it in the Café because that is where their story began, and it seemed right that it should be the place where they made their formal commitment too. The Café was transformed with thousands of white lights, flowers everywhere, candles creating a warm glow. It looked like a fairy tale had bloomed in the middle of Brooklyn. Rose walked Sienna down the aisle, crying tears of joy, looking healthier than she had in years. The cancer was in remission. The doctors said it might come back, but for now she was stable, strong. Here, and that was everything. As Sienna and Dante exchanged vows, they'd written themselves, standing surrounded by the people they loved in the place that had brought them together. Sienna thought about how strange life was. One moment of courage could change everything, how stepping in front of a gun could lead to love, how saving a stranger could save yourself, how the worst night of your life could become the worst beginning of the best chapter. She thought about Vincent, who wasn't there physically, but whose presence was felt in every word, every smile, every tear. He'd been right about everything. She and Dante had given each other something neither had believed possible: hope, home, healing, a future. When the ceremony ended and everyone cheered, Dante pulled Sienna into his arms and kissed her, like they were the only two people in the world. And in that moment, they were just a woman who'd taken a chance and a man who'd learned to love again, building a life together, one day at a time. 5 years later, Rosie's kitchen had expanded to 12 locations across New York. Each one retained the character and warmth of the original. Each one employed people who needed second chances. Each one served as a reminder that kindness mattered, that community mattered, that treating people with dignity and respect could change lives. Dante had slowly transitioned out of day-to-day operations at Castellano Industries, handing control to a capable management team, while he focused on the Café business and philanthropic work. He'd established the Vincent Castellano Foundation, which provided resources for foster children and support for families dealing with terminal illness. The foundation had already helped hundreds of violent families avoid the kind of desperate situations Sienna had faced. Rose was still alive, still visiting the original Café every day, still sitting in her corner by the window with her newspaper and tea. The cancer was in remission. The doctors called it remarkable. Rose called it stubbornness and love. "I wasn't ready to leave my girl yet," she'd say with a knowing smile. Sienna and Dante had 2 children now, a daughter named Lucia, after Dante's mother, and a son named Vincent, after his father. They were raising them with the same values both their families had taught them, that kindness matters above all else, that helping others isn't optional, that love is the strongest force in the world, that one moment of courage can change everything. Sometimes, late at night after the children were asleep and the house was quiet, Sienna and Dante would sit together and talk about that rainy November night 5 years ago, about how scared she'd been, about how certain she was that she was going to die, about how one split-second decision had led to all of this. "Do you ever regret it?" Dante asked one night, stepping in front of that gun. Sienna smiled and took his hand. "Not for a single second. Finding you was the best thing that ever happened to me," Dante said. "You gave me back my life." "We gave each other life," Sienna corrected. "That is how it works." They sat in comfortable silence, just being together. Then Dante said, "My father would be so proud of everything we've built of us." "I know," Sienna said softly. "I feel him sometimes, like he is still watching over us." "He is," Dante agreed. "I am sure of it." Outside, New York City hummed with life. Millions of people going about their lives, each carrying their own stories. And in one house in Brooklyn, 2 people who'd found each other in the middle of chaos sat together in the dark, grateful for every moment that had led them here. This story reminds us that kindness is never wasted, that courage, even in small moments, can change everything, that the connections we make with others are the most valuable things we'll ever create. Sienna saved a stranger and ended up saving herself. She found love, family, and purpose in the last place she expected. The lesson here is simple but powerful. Never underestimate the impact of choosing kindness. Never be afraid to help someone, even when it is risky. Never believe that your situation is hopeless. And never forget that the best things in life often come from the moments that terrify us most. If this story touched your heart, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel so you don't miss more inspiring stories. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder that good things can come from hard times. That love can bloom in unexpected places. That taking a chance on kindness is always worth it. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Have you ever made a split-second decision that changed your life? Have you ever taken a risk on someone and had it turn out better than you imagined? Do you believe that kindness always finds its way back? Share your stories with us. We read every single comment and we treasure each one. Thank you for being part of our community. Thank you for watching. Thank you for believing in the power of stories to inspire and uplift. We wish you health, happiness, and the courage to choose kindness every single day. Until next time, remember that you never know when one small act of goodness might change everything. Goodbye for now.